Hi everyone, my name is Sam Tedrow, and I decided to do my project on water sustainability. I've always been really passionate about the environment and love doing anything outdoors, so although this is not related to my major, I thought that this was a really important issue to talk about. So basically, water is globally is one of our scarcest resources. So although you think we have a lot of oceans and things like that, only 1% of all the water on Earth is actually available for human use. So the other 99% of that water is salt water, water trapped in glaciers, or water that's just too difficult for us to get. So things like groundwater that's too deep to dig, or things that are just, too difficult to make it practical. Although globally we do have a limited amount of water, I don't think we really realize it. And the water we do have has been treated irresponsibly, and it's created a lot of difficult water issues, such as shortages in a lot of countries and poor water quality in a lot of places around the world, even in our own country. An example of this is Flint, Michigan. So water is definitely something that we need to pay attention to before it's all gone or it's not safe for us to use. So globally, the water shortages have been caused by a bunch of different factors. So that ranges from climate change, raising the temperature just of the world, and that's creating a little bit more drier, arid climates in some places than they're used to. We have a rise in population, obviously, as we get more technologically advanced. We're able to, our population is growing, so that's increasing our water demand, as well as poor water infrastructure. So as it is, water is actually really cheap to buy and to use in our homes. So we need to change the price of water to make sure that people realize how scarce a commodity it is. So in a lot of countries, water is actually being depleted and their sources are being depleted. So people have to rely on, water being trucked in or sent in from other places. Pollution is also another large issue. A lot of companies are both legally and illegally dumping pollutants and things that are coming from manufacturing into our water systems, including, our oceans, our rivers and streams, which is our fresh waters where we get our water supply. So different countries have different rules and laws on what the tolerable levels of pollution is in our water. In the United States, it goes state by state. The federal government does have a Clean Water Act, but it's up to the states to decide what is tolerable. That kind of goes along with, recycling and plastic use. It doesn't just go in our oceans like a lot of people see on social media. It actually is going in our rivers as well, and there's just not enough research for us to know what damage that's doing. Another big thing is, runoff from manufacturing. So they're not necessarily dumping it, but it's just leaking from the plants and then into our waterways and into our groundwater. Big example of that is for coal production and coal ash going into our water. So globally, I actually got to speak to a woman who's a master's candidate at App State. She studies geography and planning. She has a concentration in geography, information systems, and climate science. So she teaches a lot of classes there, and she got to lead a group to Peru this past semester, to look at, water sustainability there and water scarcity. So basically these people are dealing with a lot of water shortages and water scarcity due to their water source being depleted. They rely on glacial runoff for their water supply, and now that the glaciers are disappearing, they no longer have a water supply. So something that I thought was really interesting, she said, when you look at water sustainability in Peru, it comes down to a regional scale and places just running out of water. In Peru, the majority of their water supply is glacier runoff, so when the glaciers are gone, they no longer have a supply. There's a lot of times when I was there that they did run out of water, so they'd have to wait until the morning for more water trucks to come in, but when you turn on a faucet there's no more water to come out. So while that seems like something that's very far away, it is happening in different places around the world. Their supplies are being depleted. That can happen from glacial runoff, when glaciers go away, or even groundwater. We suck up all the water from the aquifers under the ground, and then it can't replenish itself fast enough at the rate that we're using it. So this is just one example of a country that's facing water shortages. I think it's really interesting because you often think of Africa and places like that having issues, but It's happening in multiple different continents and different countries. And that's all due to, overuse of that water supply and water source and poor water management. They're just not using it in a responsible way. So locally, I don't think we realize that this is also a big issue. So it's putting our water supply at risk. Charlotte Mecklenburg area gets their water supply from the Catawba Watery River Basin. So it spans 225 miles and it supplies water to nearly 2 million people. But there are a lot of dangers facing that water supply, and that includes overland development. We're developing the land too fast, and it's, not giving the water from the water cycle a way to, do its natural thing. And since the land has been smooth and there's no plants there anymore, the water is just running off, creating landslides, floods, those kinds of things. And it can cause a lot of infrastructure issues. With Charlotte being the second fastest growing city in the nation, our water use is also growing. So according to a study done by the Catawba Watery River Basin Water Management Organization, the Catawba River Basin, Charlotte's main water source and only water source, will reach critically low levels by 2055. And that is if things just stay the way they are. And I know that seems like far away, but that's only if they stay the way they are. If we have more of a population increase than we're expecting and more water usage, therefore, critically low levels might be reached as early as 2035. So that's only 16 years from now. I think a lot of times we don't realize it because we just turn on the faucet and there's water there, but that's not necessarily going to be there forever. Another issue facing our water sources is pollution, especially in the Catawba River Basin. In North Carolina, we don't have a great track record of environmental sustainability practices. We actually have one of the lowest budgets towards environmental sustainability than most of our, neighboring states. But for pollution, in 2015, there were 6,480 companies that had permits to dump waste into our bodies of water. That's about double the amount that South Carolina had permitted. These permits are done through the Clean Water Act, which is a federal mandate, which mandates companies to get permits if they're going to dump waste from their manufacturing processes into our water. However, the tolerable amount differs from state to state. So North Carolina has decided to allow more people to dump into our water because we have a higher tolerance for pollution levels in our water, which is kind of crazy to think about because it's something that we as consumers don't have a say over. It's something that our state government decides for us. So along with the dumping, which is done technically legally through the state of North Carolina, there's also a lot of issues with runoff from manufacturing. So not necessarily something that they're doing on purpose, but the water that is raining down on these facilities is taking with them all of that pollution and all those chemicals, and it's going into our groundwater and going into our water systems. A big player in that is, our coal production in this state and the coal ash runoff that's going into our water. So with those issues in Charlotte, another big part that goes into that is environmental justice. So although all of these water issues in Charlotte affect the whole entire general population, it also disproportionately affects lower income areas and lower income neighborhoods. Charlotte is pretty segregated in terms of socioeconomic status. So these neighborhoods that don't have necessarily the education or income to, understand or affect these issues, it's going to hurt them more. So these lower income families might face harsher effects of water accessibility and water quality and pollution. So, example of that is in Flint, Michigan. These people might have a lower income status, so they didn't have access and they didn't have a voice to make it heard. It took a long time to reach national attention. So I did an interview with Justine Saunders. She has a degree in environmental science, and she's actually a science teacher in the Charlotte Mecklenburg School District. And she did her senior thesis on environmental justice in Charlotte. So she said, you see more pollution in systematically neighborhoods of color and impoverished areas Whether it's levels to be concerned about or not, they need to understand what's happening with their water, because if these areas can begin to protest and have a voice, there will be change, but no one's educating them on these issues. So, this water quality, they might not understand if they are getting less water quality because of possibly some infrastructure issues in their area, older buildings or buildings that aren't kept up with as well. They might not understand that the water might not be great for them, or that it can have a huge impact on the environment. And they also might not have the availability to make environmentally friendly choices because they are more expensive. That's kind of something that comes with privilege, is being able to make the choices of what products you're using. So, although it's a really big problem, there is hope. There's ways to fix it. Some simple things can be done at different levels. So, as an individual, we can learn to responsibly use water. We can learn to recycle correctly, and we can use more environmentally sustainable products if that is available to us and we have that option. As businesses, companies can help by using more environmentally friendly manufacturing processes and practices. They can reduce waste and pollution and create more sustainable buildings for their businesses to run in. And then at an even larger government level, policies can be made to reduce pollution and provide funding for environmental education so that all of their constituents understand the environmental impacts of their actions. So there is a really big importance for education. That's the first step to making a difference in our impact, in the impact that we have on the environment, just so people understand the choices that they're making. So in that interview with Elizabeth Bailey, Justine Sanders, and Cassidy Patemore, who is a member of the Green Team at Queen's University, all three people mentioned that education was really important in making sure that we are, making environmentally sustainable decisions. So Liz Bailey, something she said was, I think that just being educated about even just your area, even if everyone knew about the problems that were going to occur in Charlotte in so many years, or just having the knowledge and understanding of why it's so important and how it will impact you in the future, that kind of trickles down to all the actions you take during your daily lives. So just being educated on, what does not recycling actually do to the environment? What does all this extra water use do to the environment? In Charlotte, residential water use uses up 67% of all water use in Charlotte, and that equates to about 300 gallons of water per day. So even if someone can cut down their shower by a minute or turn the water off while they're brushing their teeth, they can cut down on that water use and provide a more sustainable water source for us in the future. For businesses, businesses can make a huge impact. They can decide not to put waste into our environment. Instead of just taking the easy way out and dumping it into the water, they can learn ways to, responsibly get rid of that waste without impacting the environment as much. They can also help by creating recycling programs and building more sustainable buildings. So recycling, I found out through these interviews with Cassidy that Queen's University, where I go to school, doesn't actually recycle. They just put recycling bins out there for image. So while you think you're doing a good thing, you really need to check up and make sure that the places that say they're recycling are recycling correctly. It costs $33 to put a ton of trash into a landfill, and it costs $70 to recycle it. So while that decision is usually decided by funding and through costs, we need to make sure that our businesses are being held accountable and making environmentally sustainable choices. I know at Appalachian State, Liz Bailey said that they do a lot of sustainability efforts. In their recycling program, they actually have a very large recycling bin and a smaller basket for trash, so that there is more of an emphasis and more of an encouragement to recycle and to put as little as you can into the landfill. And that all trickles down to water quality and water pollution as well. So I think a really good example of businesses being more environmentally friendly is Habitat for Humanity. Habitat for Humanity creates or builds homes for people with lower income and people who may have lost their home due to catastrophe. And so they actually have decided to create more sustainable homes. So that not only increases the value of the home, but it also gives more accessibility to sustainable materials to these lower income neighborhoods. In 2015, they built their 100th LEED certified home. So LEED, LEED, is a certification that businesses and buildings can get, just stating that they use environmentally friendly materials and that they have appliances that use less water and use less energy. So businesses building more sustainable homes is really important, just with material use and making sure that we're using less water. Leaks contribute to a lot of our water usage, and we don't even know it. If your pipe is leaking, that's still using up clean, fresh water, even if it's not being used. So Justine Saunders said, I think the other thing with being in an urban environment is getting people to renovate old buildings instead of building new buildings, because we're getting to a point where we're increasing our own temperature in Charlotte. So this can be seen even in Myers Park, where Queens is. There's a lot of old historical houses, and instead of tearing them down, we could just renovate them and make them a little bit more environmentally friendly. She also says it's wasting a lot of materials. It really comes back around to water and the water being used to create those supplies, and that's an overuse of water for something that we don't even need. So all of the water that's being used to create these materials really doesn't need to be used because there's already materials there. They just need to be renovated. So encouraging businesses to take stronger practices really shows that they put an importance on environmental sustainability in their company. And then finally, steps for governments. Local and state governments can make a large impact by creating environmentally protective choices. This can come in the form of, laws on tolerable pollution levels in bodies of water, as well as water management policies and practices. Another big thing that governments can do is changing the allotment of funds that go towards environmental protections. So that can do a lot of things. One, it can allow funding to go towards environmental education so that we can educate people about clean and safe water as well as sustainable water usage, because it all starts with education, giving them the opportunity to know what their actions actually do for the environment. That can also help to complete more research to determine the true state of our water sources. Pollution is a really big thing in our rivers and lakes, but we don't even know how much plastic is causing pollution in those lakes. We don't know how much plastic is in them. We just know that there is. So being able to do more research would help us to get a better idea of how clean and how healthy our water systems are and our water supplies. And then finally, creating better working infrastructure to improve water quality and reducing waste. So just as in Flint, Michigan, their pipes had lead in them and they were creating poor water qualities, that was due to a lack of safe infrastructure. So including more allotment for funds for infrastructure would really help with water quality. And even fixing leaks, the leaks are using up water, and changing up that, or fixing the infrastructure will help a lot with that. So along with that, as I mentioned, the Clean Water Act is a federal mandate or federal law stating that companies have to, get permission to dump their materials into bodies of water, and they are determined by states. So North Carolina can take a tougher stance on pollution levels, and they can limit further permits given to companies for dumping. And that will really encourage companies to find a better way to deal with these materials, as well as improve the quality of our water. And it is doable. Other states have done it. South Carolina has half the amount of permits that we do. So it is possible to make a change at a state level, but we have to make a change at a personal level first to show the government show businesses and the government that this is something that's really important to us, and that all stems back to education. So some key takeaways that I learned from researching this issue is that, while water may seem abundant in the Charlotte area, we still have to take steps to ensure that we have clean and abundant water for future generations. We can't use it all up before, the next generations come. We have to take steps now. Being kinder to our environment is really important. We can do that through recycling, choosing more sustainable products, and using less water and materials to help have cleaner water in our areas, and as well as globally, making those global choices. Education is vital to ensuring that all people, no matter their income or education level, understand our impact on the environment, and making sure that they understand and know how to determine if they're getting the best water quality possible. And finally, although this problem can't be fixed overnight, we do need to start taking steps immediately so that we can curb this issue before it becomes even larger and more people lose access to clean water. It starts as an individual, and it starts by showing that this is an important issue, and we're going to make changes to stop this issue from happening even further. So that's really what I learned through all of this. I didn't realize it was such a huge problem, and I knew that environmental sustainability was important, but I didn't realize how close to home it really hits. So just remember to, be cognizant of the choices you're making, and yeah, just be good to our environment. So thanks for listening.